she was rejected on a date. Then a single dad mechanic's little daughter asked the female cop, "Can you be my mom?" The night she was rejected on a date did not end with silence or dignity. It ended with the kind of hollow ache that sat heavy in her chest as she drove through empty streets in her police uniform, wondering how a life built on strength and service could still feel so unbearably lonely. She had spent years proving herself in a world that expected her to be tougher than her emotions, sharper than her fear, and calmer than her pain. Yet that evening, after a polite smile and a gentle excuse, she felt invisible, as if the badge on her chest had become a wall no one wanted to cross. She did not know that the smallest voice she would meet that same week would crack that wall wide open and change the direction of her life forever. Before the story goes any further, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Grandma Dearie. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that happen when hearts meet at the right time, she threw herself back into work, the way she always did when emotions threatened to slow her down. Long shifts, late calls, routine check-ins, and paperwork filled her days. That was how she ended up at a modest repair shop on the edge of town after a minor incident that didn't make the news. The place smelled of oil and old metal, the kind of place where hands were always stained and time moved slower. The owner was a single father, a mechanic whose life had been shaped by responsibility far earlier than he had planned. His wife had passed away when their daughter was still learning to speak, leaving him to balance grief, grease, and parenthood all at once. He worked hard, spoke little, and carried a tired kindness in his eyes that came from doing everything alone. His little daughter was there that day, sitting quietly on a worn chair, clutching a small teddy bear like it was her anchor to the world. She had grown up in the shop, surrounded by engines instead of playgrounds, listening to the sounds of tools instead of bedtime stories read by two parents. She watched the female cop with wide, curious eyes, noticing the softness behind the uniform long before the adults did. While the officer discussed routine matters with the father, the child studied her face, sensing something familiar, something gentle and broken in the same places she felt broken herself. The officer returned to the shop again over the next few weeks for unrelated reasons, and each time, the little girl's presence seemed to pull at her heart. There was something about the way the child smiled without hesitation, the way she offered trust without conditions, that made the officer linger longer than necessary. The single dad mechanic noticed it too, though he kept his distance, unsure whether to welcome anything that felt like hope. He had learned the hard way that attachments could disappear without warning. Life, however, has a way of testing hearts before it rewards them. One evening, the officer was called to an emergency involving the mechanic's neighborhood. What she found shook her professional composure. The single father was injured while protecting his daughter during a frightening incident that left the child shaken and clinging to him in tears. The officer stayed longer than required, ensuring medical help arrived, making sure the little girl felt safe, and silently taking on the role of comforter without realizing it. In that fragile moment, something shifted. The child's fear eased not because the danger was gone, but because someone new had stepped into her world with steady arms and a calm presence. From that day on, the bond grew naturally, without force or expectation. The officer began stopping by the shop with small gestures, sometimes bringing food, sometimes just checking in. The single dad mechanic struggled with his pride, torn between gratitude and the fear of needing someone too much. He had built his life on self-reliance, convincing himself that his daughter only needed him. But children see truths adults avoid, and his daughter saw a missing piece she had been quietly longing for. The moment that changed everything did not happen during a dramatic rescue or a heartfelt confession. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, under soft daylight, when the child looked up at the female cop with innocent certainty and asked, in her own simple way, if she could become her mother. There were no polished words, no grand explanation, just a pure wish born from love and trust. The officer felt her breath catch, the weight of that question pressing on every wound she had tried to ignore. In that instant, the rejection she once felt, the loneliness, the doubts about her worth, all collided with the possibility of being chosen in the most meaningful way imaginable. She did not answer immediately because some questions change lives and deserve more than quick responses. Instead, she stayed, she listened, and she allowed herself to feel everything she had been trained to suppress. The single dad watched, his heart torn open by the realization that his daughter was brave enough to ask for what he had been too afraid to hope for. Over time, trust replaced hesitation. Shared meals replaced empty evenings. Laughter found its way into the repair shop, and warmth filled a home that had long survived on routine rather than joy. The female cop did not quit her job or abandon who she was. Instead, she discovered that strength and tenderness could coexist. She learned that protecting and loving were not separate missions. The single dad learned that asking for help did not make him weak, and the little girl learned that families can be formed not just by birth, but by choice, patience, and love. As the seasons changed, so did their lives. The house that once echoed with silence now held bedtime routines, shared responsibilities, and the quiet comfort of knowing someone would be there at the end of the day. The officer, once rejected and alone, found herself embraced by a role she had never dared to dream of. She was no longer just a badge, no longer just a uniform. She was home. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment now to like the video, share it with someone who believes in love beyond blood, and subscribe to Grandma Dearie to support stories that remind us of humanity and hope. Just before the ending, we have a special request for you. Comment below and tell us whether you believe some people come into our lives exactly when we need them most. In the end, it was not the rejection that defined her story, but the unexpected invitation to love, to belong, and to become something greater than she ever imagined. Sometimes, the most powerful moments are not when we are chosen by the world, but when a child looks at us and sees everything they need.